To all the ladies in the place with and it's a funny thing, I kind of realized how powerful Tupac and I was. You know what I'm saying? Because we two individual people, we waged a coastal beef. You know what I'm saying? One man against one man made a whole West Coast hate a whole East Coast and vice versa. You know what I'm saying?
March 1997. 4 gunshots tore through the night sky of Los Angeles. A hip-hop legend was erased at just 24 years old. It was not a robbery. It was not an accident. It was a cold-blooded execution witnessed by the world. His real name was Christopher Wallace. Hip-hop called him the Notorious B.I.G., or Biggie Smalls, the undisputed king of the East Coast. Music took Biggie to the top, but the very spotlight turned him into a target of a bloody war between the East Coast and the West Coast. 28 years have passed, and no one has ever been convicted. Police were accused of covering up the truth. Street gangs and the music empire manipulated the narrative. You think you know this story? No. You have only seen the tip of the iceberg. While Tupac's killer, Keef D, was arrested in 2023. And Biggie. He remains the biggest mystery in hip-hop. In 2025, a seismic investigation erupted. Veteran investigators and journalists finally unearthed the truth buried for nearly 3 decades. Buckle up, we are reopening the door to the truth behind Biggie's death. And the story is far more terrifying than you imagine. Every tragedy begins with blood. Las Vegas, 1996. The moment Tupac fell, Biggie's fate was sealed. September 7th, 1996. After Mike Tyson's fight at the MGM Grand, Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight ran into Orlando Anderson, a member of the Southside Crips. He was suspected of stealing a death row chain in a previous incident. Tupac charged him right in the hotel lobby. The entire confrontation was captured by CCTV. Just 2 hours later, at the intersection of Flamingo and Caval, a white Cadillac pulled up next to Suge's BMW. Tupac was shot 4 times. Suge was injured by flying glass. Tupac was rushed to the hospital and died on September 13, 1996. His death was immediately defined as a blood feud between 2 rival gangs. Death Row, the side of Suge and Tupac, and the Southside Crips, the side of Orlando Anderson and Compton. Suge was shot right next to Tupac. He felt humiliated, challenged on his own West Coast turf. The thirst for revenge was undeniable. Biggie and Tupac, from brotherhood to total division. Few people know that in the early 1990s, Tupac once gave Biggie a place to stay when Biggie was still unknown in rap. They performed together, even talked about making a joint album. But in 1994, the Quad Studio incident in New York happened. Tupac was ambushed right inside the studio where Biggie and Diddy were present. He was shot 5 times but survived. Pac believed Bad Boy knew in advance but did not warn him. Biggie and Diddy betrayed him and orchestrated the ambush. Tupac, fueled by rage, released Hit 'Em Up. The lyrics were ruthless, insulting Faith Evans, Biggie's wife. It was not just a diss track, it was a death curse that poured gasoline onto the smoldering East Coast versus West Coast war. Money and blood. The true gang war here is the cold truth the media tried to hide. The East Coast and West Coast conflict had gone far beyond diss tracks. The war was not only on radio or in recording studios. It went deep into the underworld, where laws were replaced by the law of the jungle. Bosses like Diddy and Suge Knight did not just hire bodyguards. They made deals with gang leaders for protection and for attacks. Gangs did not just take money. They gained reputation and access to the entertainment industry. By 1997, the line between business and gang activity had completely dissolved. On one side was Bad Boy Records of Diddy and Biggie, the embodiment of East Coast power backed by New York street crews, especially a secret protection agreement with the Southside Crips whenever they set foot in Los Angeles. On the other side was Death Row Records of Suge Knight and the fallen legend Tupac, a West Coast empire backed by the ferocious mob Piru Bloods. They always believed Tupac was family, and someone had to pay for his death. Death Row controlled Los Angeles and Compton. This was not a harmless rap beef. This was a corporate war settled with gang warfare. Tupac died, not just an artist gone. A mob Piru Blood fell at the hands of a Southside Crip. That event shook everything. For the mob Piru Bloods and Suge Knight, who had just lost their biggest moneymaker, and were boiling with rage. They needed a cataclysmic act of revenge to balance blood and power. It could not be a random crip. The retaliation had to match the victim. Who do you think was the perfect target for this revenge? There was only one cold and merciless answer. The notorious Big, the symbolic rival, the face of the enemy. He had to die to send a message that no one was safe when they go against death row. And Suge Knight, sitting in the shadows with limitless power and money, found the perfect tool to carry out the execution. Death Knight. The execution at Wilshire and Fairfax, March 1997. 6 months after Tupac's death, the air in Los Angeles was still suffocating with hate. The notorious Big came to Los Angeles not to have fun, but to promote his album Life After Death, set to release on March 25, 1997. He was at the peak of his artistic power, yet trapped in a personal nightmare. Biggie arrived in Los Angeles for the 1997 Soul Train Music Awards on March 7th, filming media appearances and assuring the world that the East-West War was over. In the eyes of the public, Los Angeles was the city of lights, Hollywood, and stars. But in Biggie's eyes, this place was cursed. This was the territory of Death Row Records and the mob Piru Bloods, who were burning with the desire to avenge Tupac. Biggie, massive in size but sensitive at heart, understood the risk. Every step he took was shadowed by the feeling of being on enemy soil. Even with bad boy security by his side, he knew that in LA money could not buy safety. Fame could not stop a bullet hiding in the dark. On the night of March 8th, Biggie attended the after-party for the Soul Train Awards held at the Peterson Automotive Museum on Wilshire Boulevard. The event was filled with stars, but it was also a stage of danger. Everything went smoothly until an unexpected intervention. At around 12:35 a.m., the Los Angeles Fire Department stormed in and ordered the party to shut down immediately due to overcrowding. The tragedy began only 10 minutes later. 12:45 a.m., the death moment. The bad boy convoy left the museum. Biggie was in a dark green GMC Suburban with his security, Gregory G. Money Young, and his associate Lil Cease. Diddy's car was right behind them. They drove along Wilshire, heading back to the hotel, where maybe Biggie believed he would finally be safe. When their Suburban stopped at the red light at Wilshire and Fairfax, the night fell into a deceptive silence. Suddenly, a black 1994-1996 Chevrolet Impala SS pulled up to the right side of Biggie's vehicle. The Impala's window slowly rolled down. A black man appeared inside, looking sharply different from the violence he was about to commit. He wore a navy blue tuxedo or bow tie. That terrifyingly classy look only intensified his cold and professional demeanor. The assassin calmly extended a 9mm semi-automatic pistol out the window. He was not rushed. He was not nervous. He aimed directly at the front passenger seat where Biggie was sitting. 4 shots tore the air and ripped through Biggie. The killer knew exactly where his target was and fired with precision to ensure instant death. The black Impala vanished into the night. The bad boy team erupted in panic, rushing Biggie to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Nothing could be done. The notorious Big was pronounced dead at 1:15 a.m. This was not a failed robbery, nor a random drive-by. The Impala pulled up to the right car at the right light. The killer wore a tuxedo to blend in or leave a message. This was a professional execution carefully planned and directed by a power far above any ordinary street crew. The murder of Biggie was likely the exact revenge Suge Knight and the mob Piru Bloods had planned 6 months earlier. If you think the war ended at the intersection of Wilshire, you are wrong. The real battle began right after inside meeting rooms and LAPD case files. The terrifying truth was, Biggie's mother was forced to fight not the killer from the streets, but the very people wearing police badges. LAPD, Wall of Protection, or organized accomplice, Russell Poole, a detective against the system. Right after the murder of the notorious Big, the Los Angeles Police Department launched a large-scale investigation. But in the shadows of that investigation, one man stood out: Detective Russell Poole, the man unafraid to confront the forbidden within his own department. As reports piled in, he found no signs of a common street assassin, but instead a criminal network protected by police shields. The most shocking discovery was LAPD officer David Mack. Mack was not just a cop, He was an active member of the mob Piru Bloods death row's representative inside the police department. In 1997, he was arrested for bank robbery, but that was only the tip of the iceberg. Physical evidence was undeniable. Mack owned a black Chevrolet Impala SS, the exact year model and distinctive wheels described by witnesses at the Biggie murder scene. Even more frightening, Mack disappeared from his shift the night Biggie was killed. Poole identified Amir Muhammad, also known as Harry Billups, Mack's best friend, as the executioner. The man in the Navy tuxedo who pulled the trigger was not a random thug. He was a hired hitman orchestrated by those sworn to protect the public. But as Poole got closer to arresting Mack and Muhammad, an invisible force struck back. It was betrayal from within the LAPD, the wall of sabotage and the signature of corruption. Poole's search warrants were mysteriously denied. Files and tapes were altered or went missing. Witnesses suddenly went silent or disappeared. Poole's superiors repeatedly pressured him to drop the cop theory, a blatant order to bury the crime. The reason was painfully obvious. LAPD was already drowning in the massive Rampart scandal where dozens of officers were exposed for serious criminal activity. If the Biggie case was revealed, it would prove that the assassination of a global superstar was carried out by LAPD officers. It would be a catastrophic collapse for the department. They chose to protect the institution instead of justice. Russell Poole, a brave man, was punished for his integrity. He was pushed aside, isolated, and ultimately forced to resign once he realized the system never wanted the truth. Who ordered Mack? Who paid Amir Muhammad? Who had enough power to shut down both LAPD and the FBI? It was not a street thug. It was rotten corporate power protected by Los Angeles police badges. If David Mack was the weapon of betrayal, then Marion Suge Knight, the founder and CEO of Death Row Records, was the center of power behind the revenge machine. While Biggie tried to cool the war down, Suge Knight planned to end it with an irreversible act. Tupac's death was not just a personal loss to Suge Knight. It was a corporate disaster and an unforgivable humiliation in street law. Tupac was Death Row's money machine. His death meant Suge Knight lost hundreds of millions of dollars in potential revenue. His anger was not just hatred, it was outrage over financial damage. And most importantly, under gang law, a blood debt must be repaid with blood. Suge Knight, who had been injured in the Vegas shooting, was done playing games. He activated his network money, the Mob Piru Bloods Alliance, and the protection of corrupt LAPD officers. He needed a professional executioner, someone who could never be directly traced. The case seemed closed, but there were still people who wanted the truth, reopening the files. Wardell Pucci Faust, the hitman in the night, wearing a tuxedo in the 2000s. Detective Greg Kading was assigned to reinvestigate Biggie's case, a cold file nearly a decade old. Kading led a joint task force of LAPD and the FBI. He dug into everything Russell Poole tried to expose, but was shut down for. The connection between Death Row Records' Mob Piru Bloods and the death of the notorious Big. Their one name kept coming up: Wardell Pucci Faust. Pucci was not a rapper, not a manager, and never a show-off. He was the executioner for the gang, a trusted figure in Suge Knight's underworld, perfect for a high-level bloody mission. Evidence gathered by Kading showed Foose had everything needed to carry out the assassination. His height, skin tone, and physical features horrifyingly matched witness descriptions of the cold man in the Navy tuxedo who pulled the trigger at Wilshire and Fairfax. Financial records and witness testimony revealed that right after Biggie was shot, Pucci received a large sum of money. It was likely his payment, but the case still hit a wall. 2003. The hitman was silenced. The man who shot Biggie never went to court. On July 24, 2003, Pucci was shot dead. In Compton, a gang-related execution with no explanation. He took Death Row's biggest secret to the grave. Investigators had to accept the obvious truth. When a key link suddenly dies, someone is clearing the path. In 2010, Greg Kading announced the conclusion. The case was solved, but could not be prosecuted. The mastermind was already in prison for another crime, Suge Knight, and the shooter was dead. Justice for Biggie remained trapped forever in a tragic cycle. The case was closed, but the wound never healed. The notorious Big died at 24. Pucci died without a confession. Suge Knight remained behind bars, but not because of Biggie. A case solved, yet justice never arrived. Years passed. Biggie's murder became an urban legend, a brutal reminder of Los Angeles. But in 2023, a breakthrough forced the world to revisit this tragedy, not as a mystery, but as a programmed chain of revenge. 2025. Truth rises. Justice suspended. September 29, 2023. America shook. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department suddenly arrested Dwayne "Keffe" D. Davis, the only surviving suspect involved in Tupac's 1996 murder. He was charged with murder with a deadly weapon with gang enhancement. The world was stunned. 27 years after that night in Las Vegas, justice finally knocked on Tupac Shakur's door. This earthquake not only reopened Tupac's case, it immediately cast a spotlight back on the notorious B.I.G., revealing a two-way revenge logic impossible to deny. Keffe D., once a shadowy suspect, suddenly became the primary defendant. He was never a new name. His name appeared over and over in investigation files for decades. In 1998, he avoided prosecution while cooperating with the FBI on gang cases. Then, he spent years publicly telling the story of Tupac's murder in books and podcasts. He saw himself as an insider, even an accidental hero. But his bragging mouth dragged the police right back to him. The arrest of Keffe D., a man connected to the Crips, publicly confirmed the true nature of the East Coast versus West Coast war. Blood for blood. If the Crips killed Tupac, then the mob Piru Bloods had to kill Biggie. The entire chain of events in the investigation pointed directly back to Biggie's case, under a revenge theory that had been predicted for years. As Keffe D. stood in court in 2025, a heartbreaking paradox emerged. Nearly 3 decades had passed, and all living evidence had faded. Key witnesses were dead. The murder weapon was never found. Investigators themselves had retired or passed away. Every lead crumbled into the ashes of time. The defense immediately attacked the legality of the case, arguing the trial violated constitutional fairness due to the impossibility of ensuring a fair prosecution. Justice in limbo. A painful paradox. The state wanted a conviction. The public demanded justice. But the legal system seemed powerless against the complications created by time itself. The trial has been repeatedly delayed now to February 2026. The judge even proposed granting Keffe D. bail at $750,000, a move that caused global outrage. The public exploded. How could a man accused of killing one of music's greatest icons walk free on the streets? Although the bail proposal was later denied, after prosecutors argued the money may involve profits from selling his crime story. The truth remained. There was no bullet, no living witness, no physical evidence strong enough to secure a solid verdict. A warning for the Biggie case 2025 delivered a tragic reality. Tupac's case reopened, but justice was still suspended. Tupac Shakur still has not received the final chapter of justice 29 years later. And this is the haunting question over Biggie's case. When the only living accused suspect in Tupac's murder is Keffe D., yet the evidence is mostly memories. When the man who pulled the trigger in Biggie's shooting Poochie Faust is dead, and the mastermind Suge Knight is already imprisoned for another crime. Can a trial ever be truly fair when the truth is known, but physical evidence has been wiped away by time? 2 icons fell. 2 mysteries remain unsolved. The truth is alive, but justice may have died long ago. It has been nearly 3 decades since Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. were murdered in 2 back-to-back shootings that changed hip-hop forever. Every suspect from street gangsters to Blood and Crip soldiers has died or gone to prison. Yet one of the biggest names still stands outside the eye of the storm. Sean Diddy Combs, the bad boy records mogul, who once stood beside Biggie and went head-to-head with Death Row's empire. Diddy, the last survivor, and the questions that never go away. For more than 20 years, the name Diddy has never disappeared from controversial documents related to the Tupac case. His name appeared 47 times in legal files and testimony tied to alleged plots against Tupac. These claims came from Keffe D.'s memoirs and interviews prior to his arrest in 2023. However, Keffe D. repeatedly changed his story, raising doubts about how credible his statements really were. The interesting part, Diddy has never been charged in any murder, yet his name continues to be mentioned in lawsuits and legal filings because of other controversial accusations in his personal and business life. That only fuels more questions. If everyone once tied to the Tupac tragedy has fallen or been arrested, why is Diddy still free? On the other hand, a fact cannot be ignored. Diddy is one of the most influential and powerful figures in American music, worth $2.5 billion. He is a media force behind billion-dollar brands and active in charity and culture. To many fans and colleagues, Diddy is the mastermind producer who transformed Biggie from a nobody into a hip-hop legend. And every accusation against him, according to Diddy and current law, lacks solid grounds for criminal prosecution. Diddy is not a convicted criminal. He is the last major question mark still alive in that bloody war. A music legend, a business titan, a man always in the center of the story, yet never once stepping into a courtroom for Tupac or Biggie. And that alone keeps the entire world asking questions. Who benefited most? From the two deaths that shook hip-hop, 2 bullets, 2 lives, and a persistent question for nearly 30 years. Who truly gained when Tupac and Biggie died? The answer is not simple. But follow the money, the power and the fame, and a cold picture begins to form. Bad Boy Records, the empire that shined after the tragedy. After Biggie's death in 1997, his final album, Life After Death, was released just 2 weeks later and immediately hit #1 on Billboard with massive sales. This moment turned Biggie from a young star gone too soon into an immortal legend. Everything tied to his name carried enormous historic, emotional, and commercial value. Bad Boy and Sean Diddy Combs profited hugely from Biggie's record sales, media coverage, marketing, and skyrocketing brand prestige. In the years that followed, Bad Boy achieved financial peaks surpassing many major labels. And beyond that, losing Biggie, though tragic, allowed Bad Boy to rebrand. Diddy shifted from backing a hardcore rapper to crafting the persona of a global hip-hop business icon. A safer direction. Less exposure to violence. Less gang-affiliated risk. Bad Boy Records was the clearest beneficiary of Biggie's death in commercial, reputational, and long-term profit terms. When the underworld smiled in the dark. Many theories suggest that the deaths of Tupac and Biggie relieved immense pressure for feuding factions in hip-hop. Less public confrontation, less spotlight, less scrutiny. With both icons alive, every camera was pointed straight at the East-West conflict. Gang ties, guns, extortion street politics. Everything was exposed. Every move in the underworld was watched under a microscope. But when both legends fell, the war cooled. Media attention faded. The public lost its target, and the underworld suddenly reclaimed its own darkness. No more superstar rappers dragging the cameras into every corner of gang territory. No more diss tracks turning hidden rivalries into public warfare. Instead, violence returned to where it lived in hidden alleyways, midnight deals, and silent executions no one would ever witness. They, the figures in the shadows, could breathe again, because when the spotlight goes dark, the darkness wins first. However, this belongs to theory nearly impossible to confirm outright. The bloody legacy of hip-hop, the notorious B.I.G. and Tupac Shakur. Their names did not just represent music. They were two extremes, two worlds, two kingdoms standing at opposite ends of the biggest cultural war in hip-hop history. East Coast, the foundation. West Coast, the rebellion. Both sides were ready to knock the food out of each other's hands over a single lyric, a rumor, a threat. But beneath the violence and the glory, the heartbreaking truth was, they wanted the same thing, respect, and the chance to live long enough to finish their story. Tupac, the warrior poet. Biggie, the storyteller of the poor streets. They were once friends wanting to change their lives. But the media, the gangs, the money, the pride and the whispers in the dark turned them into destined enemies. Even when they wanted peace, bullets spoke first. 2 deaths ended the war, but brought no justice. 1996, Tupac fell in Las Vegas. 1997, Biggie was gunned down in Los Angeles. Just 6 months apart, 2 giants dropped like soldiers in a pointless war. But their deaths became a brutal lesson for hip-hop. Record labels were forced to cool down. East and West rappers started collaborating instead of fighting. The media lost the icons they used as fuel. The East-West war dissolved once both sides lost their most valuable kings. The entire industry woke up. If even they were not safe, then who are we? After Biggie and Tupac, rappers needed security at shows. Police watched hip-hop more closely. Artists talked less about gangs. Fear crept into every studio, and labels would never again allow artists to load the gun with their lyrics like before. The war ended, but gangster culture was wired like explosives into the legacy of hip-hop. Do you remember Biggie comment below right now? If you want the buried secrets of hip-hop to keep being exposed, if you believe the truth must be told no matter how painful it is, hit like right now. Subscribe so you do not miss the next episodes. This journey is only just beginning.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and the truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.